Hey, welcome. Today, we're going to dive into one of the most powerful and maybe one of the most misunderstood psychological concepts out there for really getting to know yourself, the shadow.
You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Someone makes a totally harmless comment and bam, you feel this jolt of anger. Or you find yourself getting just like irrationally annoyed by somebody's little habits. And you're left thinking, whoa, why did I get so worked up? Well, according to the legendary psychologist Carl Jung, the answer is hiding in a part of you that you can't even see. So, what is this invisible force that's pulling our strings? Jung give it a name, the shadow. And honestly, just beginning to understand what it is, that's the very first step toward living a more whole, more authentic life. Now, the shadow isn't some kind of evil monster hiding inside you. Not at all. It's actually much simpler. It's just all the parts of ourselves that our conscious mind decided were, well, bad or unacceptable or weak. Think of it like a collection of traits we've shoved down into the basement of our psyche because they just didn't fit with the person we think we're supposed to be. And this quote from Jung really hits home, doesn't it? It perfectly explains what's at stake. See, when we're totally unaware of our shadow, it doesn't just go away. It runs the show from behind the curtain, influencing our choices, our relationships, often leading to this pattern of self-sabotage that we just can't seem to figure out. To make this super clear, let's put the shadow right next to its opposite, the persona. The persona is your public mask. It's that polished, curated version of you that you show everyone at work or, on your Instagram feed. The shadow? That's everything you had to hide away to keep that mask looking perfect. They're really just two sides of the very same coin. Okay, so this leads to a pretty obvious question, right? If the shadow is, by its very definition, unconscious and hidden from us, how on earth are we supposed to find it? Well, that's the tricky part. At first, we don't see it in ourselves. We see it everywhere else. And this is the key. The main way we meet our shadow is through something called projection. It's a defense mechanism, basically. We unconsciously take a part of our own shadow that we can't stand and we pin it on somebody else. It lets us see those traits out there instead of having to deal with them in here. This is probably one of Jung's most famous quotes, and for good reason. It's so true. That intense annoyance you feel when you see someone acting arrogant? That might just be pointing to a bit of your own disowned arrogance. That harsh judgment you have for someone you see as lazy? That could be a hook for your own repressed need for rest. These big emotional reactions are like a giant flashing compass pointing right at your own shadow. So here are some real, practical signs that you might be caught in a projection. Do you find yourself seeing someone as either all good or all bad, like no in between? Do you boil them down to a single label? Is your emotional reaction just way, way out of proportion to what's actually happening? If any of that sounds familiar, you've probably found one of your shadow's hooks. And look, this isn't about blaming yourself. It's just about recognizing when your own stuff is making the situation feel way more intense.
Okay, so you've spotted a trigger. You've identified a moment of intense projection. Now what? Well, you need a tool, something to help you start a conversation with this hidden part of yourself. And one of the most popular and effective starting points is using shadow work prompts. You can think of these prompts as being like a flashlight you can shine down into that dark basement of your psyche. They're just simple, reflective questions that are designed to guide your attention inward, to help you get past your conscious mind's usual defenses and just get curious about what's really going on under the surface. And here are a few great examples to get you started. A classic one is just asking what behaviors in other people make me the angriest. Or, and this one is super important, what qualities do I really strongly admire in others? The whole point here isn't to find some perfect, quick answer. It's to just sit with a question, maybe journal on it, and see what comes up without judging it. But, and this is absolutely crucial, while prompts are a fantastic place to start, they are not the finish line. As the Jungian therapist Raphael Kruger puts it, just obsessing over prompts and journaling can actually become another way to avoid the real work. The goal isn't just to find the shadow, it's to integrate it. And this brings us to a really fascinating and honestly often overlooked part of all this. We tend to think the shadow is just the negative stuff, our anger, our jealousy, our fear, but that is only half the story. What if some of the parts you repressed weren't bad at all? What if you also pushed away some of your most brilliant, powerful, and positive qualities? Maybe because they felt too scary or too bold, or they just didn't fit in with the expectations of your family or your friends. This is what's known as the golden shadow. It's the treasure we've buried in our own darkness. Remember that prompt I mentioned, the one about what you admire in others? So often, the very qualities we put on a pedestal in other people, their amazing courage, their creativity, their confidence, are actually just reflections of our own untapped potential, our own golden shadow staring back at us. So, what kind of gold might you find down there? Maybe it's a hidden talent for art that you gave up on because someone told you it wasn't a real job, or a powerful voice you learned to silence because you were afraid of being too much. Maybe it's a deep well of creativity you buried under years of responsibility. Reclaiming this gold is such a vital part of the work. So, we've used our triggers and prompts to get some insight into both the dark and the golden parts of our shadow. Now comes the most important piece of the whole puzzle, turning all that insight into real, actual change in your life.
This quote is just so powerful. What it means is that once you become aware of a hidden part of yourself, you now have a responsibility, an obligation to do something with that knowledge. If you discover repressed anger, you now have an obligation to learn how to set healthy boundaries. If you uncover your golden creativity, you have an obligation to yourself to go buy some paint.
It all boils down to this simple 3-step path. First, you acknowledge it. You use your triggers to see what's really there. Second, you transform your perception of it. You look at it without judgment and try to understand its purpose. And third, the most critical step, you embody it. You take action. You consciously start expressing that quality in a healthy way in your real life. Because at the end of the day, shadow integration is not something you can just think your way through in a journal. It is a practice. It's actually having that difficult conversation. It's signing up for that class. It's finally saying no when you need to. It's a continuous, lifelong journey of becoming a more whole and authentic you. So I'll leave you with this to think about. Look at the people you admire. Look at the things that trigger you. Think about the dreams you might have put on a shelf. What untapped potential, what hidden talents, what withheld courage, what gold is just waiting in your shadow for you to finally claim it?